Hey guys, welcome back to my channel, Simone here. So today I'm going to be filming my January wrap up, and I know that this is up really late and I can only apologise. I had a week off at the beginning of February and I had every intention of filming this video then, but I've been really sick and I have managed to sort of put some makeup on, but you might still be able to tell, like my nose, I mean I'm drawing attention to it, but it's so like red and like flaky right now that if you can see that I can only apologise. But hopefully the books that I'm going to talk about will be much more exciting than my face. So yeah, also if I sound funny that's also why, because like I said I've had a really bad cold. So I'm filming this today with the hope that when I watch the footage back I don't want to like curl up into a ball and like cry. So I read 11 books in January and I think that was a really great start to my reading year. I've read some really interesting books and books that I had out of the library last year that I hadn't quite got to yet. Also some books that I would never normally have read, but kind of came as a sort of surprise I guess. So yeah, I'm going to talk about those today. And let's get started. So the first book that I read this month was Rogues by many different authors, but specifically edited by George R.R. Martin, who wrote the Game of Thrones series. I actually really enjoyed this. This is basically an anthology of basically a lot of different authors have been given the word rogues as a kind of prompt and they have to write a story about it, and I found this so interesting. There were so many different authors, a lot I had heard of or had read before. For example, there was Neil Gaiman, Patrick Rothfuss, who else was in it? Gillian Flynn was in it. There was lots of different people, but there was also lots of brand new authors that I'd never heard of before or had never read from before. Like for example, I've never actually read a Neil Gaiman book, but I actually really liked his story in this. I would say that I was quite disappointed in terms of my two favourite authors in this, whose stories I didn't actually like. I didn't really like George R.R. Martin's story in this, which I know is strange because he was the one who edited the whole thing, and I think he did a great job at that. I just didn't enjoy his story. I felt like there was too many names in it, and it was kind of like name dropping loads of different people and expecting me to remember for a short story, where I was kind of like, it's a short story, like it's not supposed to be so in depth as like a novel. But I also didn't like Gillian Flynn's story in this. I find Gillian Flynn is very hit or miss for me. Like I used to think she was one of my favourite authors, and I do love her stuff that I've enjoyed. I read Dark Places and I read Gone Girl last year and loved them, but I didn't like Sharp Objects. I didn't like this short story. So maybe I feel like it's kind of like swings and roundabouts with her. But I would say I actually heard about this anthology on Books and Lala's channel, and I know that she generally tends to like slightly more contemporary thrilling books, so I was a bit like, I'll try this book, because I think it's mainly like fantasy, I would say, but I found that it was really easy to read, really enjoyable. I found it really interesting, and yeah, I would definitely recommend this one. It's a massive book, it was like 800 pages, but I definitely think it was worth it. And for somebody who doesn't normally enjoy short stories, I did actually really like it, so that's a plus too. The second book I read this year was Gone by Michael Grant, which is the first in the Gone series. I think there's 6 books in this series. And last year in my, was it the end of year book tag, which I'll link below, there was a question that was like, which book do you think could become your favourite book of the year, like before the end of the year? And I said this book, if I managed to read it before the end of the year. Now I didn't manage to read it at the end of the year. I read it in 2018, but I gave it 5 stars. Oh, by the way, I gave the George R.R. Martin anthology 4 stars. I gave this one 5 stars. It was absolutely brilliant. At one point I did sort of think, this seems like a bit of a dystopian, like general dystopian. Basically, if you don't know, it follows a town where one day all the adults disappear. Yep. They're in, like, the main character Sam, he's in the middle of a class and his teacher disappears, and every student over the age of 15 disappears too. And so it's a case of them having to live in this town, not being able to get out of the town, like fully out of the town. There's like a big barrier thing up. It kind of reminds me a little bit of Under the Dome by Stephen King, like small elements of it. But anyway, yeah, this basically is about them trying to kind of work out how to live and the hierarchies and who does what, but also each time somebody turns 15, they disappear. So Sam is the main character, like I said, and he is going to turn 15 in, I believe, like 10 days. And so he has 10 days to find out what the hell is going on and how to fix it. And yeah, as I said, I loved this book. Loved this book. I thought it was a really original take on the dystopian genre, really. I've read a lot of those this last year, and this one really stood out for me, and I can't wait because there's like 5 more books in the series, so I can read more, so that's really great. So yeah, love this one. Unfortunately, the next 2 books were not quite as successful. The next book I read was Landline by Rainbow Rowell. Now, you'll probably have seen me talking about this book and about how I was really excited to read it, because I read, what have I read by her? I've read Carry On, I read Eleanor and Park, and I read Fangirl last year or the year before, and I love them all. I honestly thought she could do no wrong in my eyes. I own Attachments by her, which I haven't read yet, and I'm a bit sort of sceptical now, because basically Landline was the first adult novel of hers that I'd read. I've read all of her YA novels before that, so I'm kind of nervous to read Attachments because I believe that's an adult one as well, so hopefully I like it more than this one. This follows a woman who is a writer for a TV show, and she gets this big break just before Christmas, but it means that she cannot go with her family to her husband's mum's house for Christmas. Now, they're having some problems in their relationship anyway, and when she tells him that they can't go, he goes, no, you can't go, and they go, he takes the children and goes without her. And it's about, she then finds in her parents' house a landline phone, you know, one of those ones that you have to dial the number, one of the like older like cord phones, and it's like a bright yellow one. And she finds when she rings her husband on this number, she speaks to him like when they first met, so like 20 years before or something, I can't remember how long ago it was. And she then basically tries to save the marriage that she's losing by talking to him that long ago. Now, what I didn't understand about this, do you know what, I just didn't see the appeal in this. Like, I found, as I was reading it, I just didn't really care. I quite enjoy listening, like reading about people behind the scenes in work, so I found that a little bit fascinating. But it was very much like, she's been given this big break, right? This massive thing that they were so excited for, her and her work friends, who, you know, they've essentially pitched a new TV show and they've been successful. They have to just write the show. And for something she was so excited about, suddenly something happens in her home life and she just chucks it out of the window. Like, she just doesn't care, she's not showing up to the meetings, she's not doing anything, and I wanted to shake her because it really frustrated me. And then she didn't care in her personal life, she just wasn't really bothered, and I thought she would be more upset about the fact that she was missing her children at Christmas, but that didn't really seem to be a massive priority on her list, and I just kind of found that a bit awkward. I don't know. Something about this book just really didn't appeal to me, really turned me off, so unfortunately I give this a 2-star, but I'm really, like I said, I'm tentative about reading Attachments, but please let me know if you've read it and if you liked it, because I do have it and I would like to read it soon, but I kind of want to leave some distance between Landline and this one because I don't want to be disappointed, so we'll see. Then the 4th book I read this month was Wild, A Journey from Lost to Found by Cheryl Strayed. This is a book that was made into a movie, and I actually watched the movie first before I read the book. This has Reese Witherspoon in, who I love, but the character that she plays I don't like. And so, to be honest, I'm not sure why I picked this book up, because basically this book is the inner monologue of Cheryl Strayed, who is the main character in the film, obviously, because that's what it's about. This follows Cheryl Strayed basically decide to embark on an 1,100-mile hike on the Pacific Crest Trail in America without any form of real training or preparation beforehand. Look, this just irritated me, I'm not gonna lie. I don't like her character. I find that, I know that her mum died, and that's one of the main reasons why she decides to do this crest. Her mum died, and it's very, very tragic, and it is horrible. And then her and her husband get divorced. But she talks openly about the fact that she takes a lot of drugs and she has sex with a lot of different people, she has orgies. And the one main part of this that really did upset me was how kind of flippant she was about aborting her baby. Now obviously the situation she was in, it probably wasn't the best environment to bring a baby into, but it was just the way it was written. It seemed very callous to me. That's just my kind of opinion, and I struggled to get back on board after that. I think the actual Pacific Crest Trail stuff was quite interesting, but I feel like I got more of that in the movie than I did in the book. The book's very much like flashbacks to her kind of the life she led before and the things that she used to do, and I just wasn't very interested in that. So yeah, this was a 1-star read for me, unfortunately. The next book I read was one I'd been wanting to read for quite some time, and that was The Lying Game by Ruth Ware, which is a thriller following 4 best friends from school who used to have this game called The Lying Game, where they basically just lied to everyone and tried to get away with it. And it was kind of like they used to give each other points and things for the kind of elaborateness of the lie and all that sort of thing. And there was something about this book that was really interesting. Basically, 20 years or so, I think, after their childhood escapades, because something happened when they were children and they all left the school, so they've not seen each other for 20 years. Anyway, 20 years later, and they have all come back together because something has been found on the beach where they used to live. And I found this really interesting. Like I say, it's a thriller, and that's one of my favourite types of books to read. I would say none of the characters were particularly likeable, but I don't think that meant I didn't like the book at all. It just meant that there was probably one I did like. Yeah, I did think there was some interesting diversity, and I do think that I would read more of Ruth Ware's work. I don't think I can talk too much more about it really, because it's a thriller, like I said, so it's a bit of a surprise, I guess. I would say some of it was a bit odd. Like, there was some things that happened where I was a bit like, do I need to know that, or did it need to be said? But I do think that I enjoyed this, and it definitely kept me hooked. I read this within about like a day and a half, because I just was wanting to know what happened. So I gave this one a 4-star. Yeah, and I would read more by Ruth Ware, so give me recommendations below. What should I read next? The next book I read I'm so excited about because I loved this book. This was Simon vs. the Homo Sapiens Agenda by Becky Albertalli, and I think Becky Albertalli is an absolute genius. I adored this book. I've been hearing about this book obviously a lot. Like, everyone talks about it, everybody's read it. But there's a movie coming out this year, I believe, called Love, Simon. I think it's coming out in March. Could be wrong, but I'm so excited about it because I did absolutely love this book. I thought it was going to be a bit more cheesy than it was, and it just wasn't. It was really, really great. It basically follows a boy named Simon who is gay but is not out to anyone, basically. The only person he is out to is his he's been talking to this guy online called Blue, and they are kind of like a romantic-y situation, but they don't know who each other are, and they're sort of not really planning on finding out who each other are either, because they're a bit scared. I think that they'll find out and it won't be who they think, or they won't be able to do anything about it anyway. And also the characters in this were just great. There is a character who is trying to blackmail Simon because he finds the emails to Blue, and he's kind of threatening that he's going to tell the whole school about it. And it's about that and how Simon comes to terms with it. It's also about finding out who Blue is, and I sort of guessed a little bit. I was kind of throwing out ideas to myself the whole time, like, I think it's this person. Every time a new male character came in, it was like, oh, it's that one. Oh, I think it might be this one. Oh, I think it's that. But I was kind of like, I'd love it to be this character, and it was, which I thought was amazing. And it didn't make it any, like, it didn't spoil the enjoyment for me, because even if I did know who it was, kind of guess who it was, because I loved the ending and I thought it was great. And I just thought it was really sweet, but it wasn't like crass or cheesy or like over the top. It just seemed real, and I loved that about it. And I think Simon and Blue are like my favourite like couple ever, because I just love them together. Definitely gave this one a 4-star. I would say I think some of the side characters seemed to be in it a little bit just to kind of bring the plot along, just a tiny bit. For example, who was it? Nick. Like, I know Nick's one of his best friends, but I almost didn't really feel like there was anything else that he brought to the table apart from that, apart from being like a potential love interest between his other friends. It was very confusing. But anyway, I don't think that necessarily brought down too much. I gave it a 4-star, and I absolutely loved this book. The next book I read was An Abundance of Catherines by John Green. I've been going through a bit of a John Green kick. I'm trying to read all of his books. I think I've got like maybe 2 or 3 left to read. And I read this book and I hated it. I gave this a 2-star. I was not a fan. I really wanted to like it. I've liked pretty much every John Green book. I read Looking for Alaska, loved that. I read A Fault in Our Stars and loved that. I've read Paper Towns. To be honest, I didn't love that one. I think I gave it 3 stars. I wasn't a big fan, but I didn't hate it. This one, I didn't like the main character. I found him to be... I know that he was supposed to be a bit difficult and a bit awkward. He's very intelligent. He's basically a childhood genius, and he's only ever been with girls called Catherine, which in itself is ridiculous. But, you know, each to their own. But I just found him to be really whiny and kind of like, oh, this always happens to me and I'm, you know, let down. And I'm always dumped by the sort of prodigal Catherine. Like, I don't know, there was just something about it. I just found it a bit weird. I did love his best friend. His best friend was my favourite, like, person in this whole book. I just felt like there was lots of characters and it was really weird. And also it was weird that his parents were like, yeah, just go on a road trip to God knows where for however long you want to get over this. Like, it didn't make sense to me. I didn't think it was realistic. And there was too much, like, theorem, like mathematical theorem in this. Like, I found it irritating. The main character, I didn't like him, so I found this like really difficult to get behind him and want to care what he was doing. Yeah, so that was that. Didn't like it at all. 2-star. Next up, a book I started in December because it's massive, is It by Stephen King. This book is 1166 pages long, I remember. But I actually listened to the audiobook of this, and my mum has the book right now, so I can't even show it to you. I'll just obviously put the picture up on the screen. But I lent it to her. But I gave this one a 3-star. It's actually my least favourite Stephen King book I've read so far. I think I've read 7 or 8 now. Not that it's a bad book, I just found it to be very... There was lots of different things in it. Now, Stephen King is like the king of being able to like wind different storylines into one story. And I loved that. I found that I didn't think it needed to be as long as it was. I think there were a lot of things in this that could have been massively condensed down. But I also think that's kind of the joy of Stephen King, is that you know that it's a big book and you know that basically you're getting like a world history lesson about this, whatever's going on. If you don't know what it's about, it follows 6 12-year-old children. Are they 12? I think they're 12. It follows them 28 years before in 1952 and then 28 years later in 1980 something. I'm trying to work that in my head as I went. Basically it starts off with children being killed and found dead in sewers and like bodies disappearing and things. And then 28 years later the same sort of thing starts happening, and these 6 people get phone calls saying you need to come back, and they have to go back to where they grew up, where they didn't remember anything that had happened in the first place, to try and stop it. Now, It is often portrayed as the clown Pennywise, which you might have seen if you've seen the films and stuff, but it is not just Pennywise. And actually this book, which I was expecting to be terrifying because clowns and Pennywise, doesn't actually have that much Pennywise in it really, like in comparison. It is just it kind of moulds itself into your biggest fear, I think is how it goes. And so there are lots of different forms of it. Each of them is, you know, terrifying. This was definitely a grotesque book. The ending was very like magical and sort of not in reality, let's put it that way. It wasn't like a realistic thriller. But do you know what? I did enjoy it. I just found that there were so many different things happening. I was a bit like, what the hell is going on now? But yeah, I did enjoy this. And like I say, I gave it a 3-star. I did like the narrator as well. I actually thought he was really good. Although, I will say one thing, right? I was warned by Books with Emily Fox, whose channel I'll link below. I love her channel. About this, like, I won't say it. There is a specific scene very close to the end of the book that a lot of people obviously don't enjoy. And I'm not going to say what it is because it would essentially ruin part of the book. But I did find it disturbing, of course, but I also didn't think it was as bad as it had been made out to be, because I think some people are obviously more sensitive to that kind of thing than other people. I personally found it to be, I can understand why it was in the book. I mean, if it was a bit gross, but I did understand why it was there. And so for me, it wasn't as big a problem as I know it has been for some other people, so that's just my take on it anyways. Then the next book I read, I was actually really excited about because my mum gave me a book recommendation, and it doesn't very often happen that way around. Often it's the other way, or I just read a book that she has on her shelf already. But this book, she was like, you have to read this book, like, I'm gonna give this to you. And it is Undead and Unwed by Mary Janice Davidson, and this is so funny. I gave this one a 5 out of 5 stars because I just couldn't stop laughing throughout. Basically it follows is a woman named Betsy Taylor, or Elizabeth Taylor, but she doesn't go by that because obvious reasons. She wakes up one day in the morgue as a vampire, and she's like, what on earth is going on? And basically she has to come to terms with the fact that she's now a vampire who has slightly different powers than a lot of the other vampires, and then these other people come around, these other vampires, and are convinced that she's their queen, and she's a bit like, what are you talking about? This is so funny. I love that the caption on this, wherever it is, hang on, there we go. It says, Mary Janice Davidson's wonderful Undead series of romantic comedies answers the burning question of what would happen if Carrie Bradshaw ever met a vampire. And if you don't know who Carrie Bradshaw is, which I'm sure most of you do, she is the main character in Sex and the City, which is one of my favourite TV shows of all time, and it really does sum this up. I will say the one thing that really put me off, because Mum didn't mention this to me, not even a little bit, is how like raunchy this book is. Like, there is a lot of sex scenes and they are not like shy about talking about it. But that was kind of funny anyway. Yeah, I really, really loved this. I definitely would recommend it. I'm like literally already reading the second book in the series, so that'll probably be in next month's wrap up. But yeah, I gave this one a 5 out of 5 stars. Then I don't have too much to say about this next one because obvious reasons, but I read Harry Potter and the Philosopher's Stone, the illustrated edition by J.K. Rowling and illustrated by Jim Kay, and I don't have it with me because I had to take it back to the library. But my goodness me, it's a beautiful, beautiful book. And it was really interesting reading a book in a different like format than when you've read before. I've obviously read the actual not the actual book many times before, but for some reason I just found this so interesting, and just I read it in one day actually. I was quite like casually just sat there flipping through, and yeah, it was really cool to see the pictures alongside and kind of how somebody else sees them as well, because what I loved about it is the pictures do not necessarily depict the film. Like, it doesn't, they don't necessarily correlate, they don't look the same as you would expect maybe, and I kind of love that. I found it to be really, really refreshing and just really interesting, so yeah, I like that one. Obviously a 5-star. And then the final book I read this month was Big Little Lies by Leanne Moriarty, and this book I was quite surprised by because I'd heard a lot of people talk about the TV show and how the book was really good as well, and I was a bit like, I don't know anything about it, I have no idea what it's about. And then when I read a bit about the blurb, it basically was saying that it's about these 3 mums who, whose children start kindergarten together, and it's about something happens at the kindergarten that essentially leads to murder, eventually, like a, you know, long thing. And I was kind of like, I don't know if I'm going to enjoy a book that's about sort of like playground games and stuff. Like, I just didn't think that was going to be really my thing. But my god, this was gripping. I was reading it like, I just want to know what happens. Like, because basically at the beginning you find out that somebody died and somebody's going to get in trouble for killing them. but you don't know who died. So you're reading throughout this book and you're like, is it this person? Oh, I hope it's that person, I don't like them. But you don't even know if it's male or female for a start. So it's like, it could be literally anybody. And yeah, I loved this. I thought the main characters were great. I'm really excited to watch the TV series now. I think that it was just so like intricate. There were so many different things going on, and I just felt for everybody, like I cared. And yeah, like I said, loved this book, absolutely amazing, 5 stars. So the end of my month was really good. I read 3 5-star reads in a row, so that was good. So that is the end of my January wrap up. As again, I'm really, really sorry it's late. I hope that you'll forgive me. And yeah, let me know in the comments below what books you've read this month and if you've read any of the ones I've read. And give this video a thumbs up if you enjoyed it, and subscribe to my channel if you haven't already. And I shall see you next time. Bye guys!